Okay, hands up if you feel a bit like a salmon swimming uphill in the current environment, swimming up the river. Hands up, few hands, few hands. Everyone being honest and truthful. A lot of hands in the air. Yeah, it's pretty challenging times, isn't it? And next slide, please. I guess there's also quite a few people that feel like they're climbing the mountain, needing to ask for help. Some people clinging on by their fingertips. And there are a lot of people, hang on a moment please, there are a lot of people that are struggling at the moment, and I'm deliberately going to be a little bit provocative in some of my conversation this morning, because I think we have a wonderful opportunity once we get past these challenges. Those people that are able to hang on to that mountain that they're climbing by their fingertips, can we help each other up, grab the hand and pull people up, more collaboration, which has been one of the keys that we've seen so far. And I want to pose the question, is COVID a convenient opportunity, a convenient excuse, or a great opportunity? I think it's kind of easy, and I see it in many industries and in life, to say COVID created these challenges for us. I believe that many of the challenges that our industry is currently facing were here way before COVID, and COVID rose them to the surface, and I believe presents an enormous opportunity. So over the next about 25 minutes, I'm just going to focus on three key areas. I'm going to talk about the business model, I'm going to talk about our offering, and I'm going to talk about the industry. And before I do that, I just thought it might be useful. I know lots of you in the room, but I just wanted to give a quick bit of background about myself. I'm incredibly fortunate to live in Bali with my beautiful wife, who many of you would have met, who is a real integral part of mass participation world, and our son Sam, who is here with us today, who has to live and breathe this, and he's met many of you over the last few years on Zoom as he's walked in on the various calls. I'm the publisher of mass participation sports events, and I have a few of those copies here to give to people. And I'm sharing a couple of anecdotes with you. I had this incredibly humbling message about 2 months ago from Mike Nishi, who's sitting here in the front row. And the message went along the lines of, I've just got off a flight to Germany and I read your book, finally got a chance to read it, and I learned so much from it, particularly in the volunteering section that you wrote. Not long after that, I was on a call with Brad Kroll from Marathon Photos, and he said, Chris, I've been to over 500 events and I learned so much from your book. And I'm not telling you that to say, look at me, I've written this book. I'm telling you that to say that we can all learn from each other. Every one of us in this room can learn from each other, and I commend you for taking the time out to come and be here. But I encourage you now to take this knowledge back and share it with other people in the industry. As we get back on that treadmill, we get so busy. This amazing collaboration that happened during COVID seems to be waning in some areas, and I think it's even more important now that we share as much knowledge as we can. I've been fortunate, as many of you in the room, to have had many amazing highlights, and one of the top for me, big thank you to Dave Cundy, also sitting in the front row, was being the road event supervisor at the Sydney Olympics. And I've been privileged to have been at the helm of events for over 1 million people during my career, and all of you know what a buzz that is, and how amazing when you get to that journey. I've been also incredibly fortunate to work with many brands and learned so many lessons. So often the journey that I've gone on has been guided by brands, and again, sitting in the very front row, Caroline Darcy, who used to be the global head of sponsorship for Standard Chartered, learned so much from her, and we will be hearing from her later on in the conversation. Importantly, in the context of where we are now, I've managed millions of dollars worth of debt along the way. And the reality is that in 2009, I became a statistic. I was one of those that didn't make it. One of the toughest days of my life, standing in front of my staff in Sydney with the administrator next to me, telling them that they no longer had jobs, and this dream that I'd been working on disappeared in front of me. And the reality is that I got through that and I got better, and I went back to Singapore, to my office there, and grew my business in Singapore and across Asia. But I wouldn't have done it without the support of many, many people, personal and business. And I'm asking you and inviting you to look around you to the people that are doing it tough in the industry, and some are doing it tougher than others. And let's make sure we support each other along the way when some people, as they inevitably will, become statistics. And I literally was talking to a friend in Portugal last week who put his business into receivership. I'm hearing many stories of people doing it really tough, desperately seeking investors or having to close their businesses up. And as we get into, without wanting to be negative, these are the opportunities that are going to come out of this as we move forward. But let's support our fellow people. So many of you know me as the CEO of Mass Participation World, consulting, advocacy, research, and education. And the education part of it, obviously something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and one of the reasons why we're here today, with huge thanks to Alessio and World Athletics for bringing us together here in Thailand, and of course Tom from Thailand Tri-League. One of the initiatives that I launched during COVID was an MPW Global Council, and Donna Stone, who's the CEO of Abbott World Marathon Majors, who's here, sits on that. Alessio sits on that. And we meet every 2 months to try and bridge the gaps across the world. And we literally have every corner of the world represented, from South America to Africa. Norrie Williamson is here, through Europe and Asia, across to Oceania, trying to just bring together the knowledge, the learnings, and share them on the MPW platform. And I share that with you to say that I'm so fortunate and privileged to be in this position, to be constantly getting information from around the world that I'm able to share. And some of you may tune into my monthly MPW Global Updates where I share that information. And I invite any of you who would like to contribute to those. I just had a great conversation with Bruce from Marathon Photos yesterday, saying, I think we can plug you into a few more people in America that can help give you those insights that you can disseminate and share, because obviously we can all learn from each other. So enough about me. Let's move on to the next kind of 20 minutes or so and talk about, firstly, the business model. This is a picture of the last in-person MPW conference, which took place in Singapore. Myself and John Ridgen on the stage. The most frequent conversation I heard there, on and off the stage, was the broken business model. How do we evolve this business model in the industry? So fast forward now, post-COVID, most people seem to be coming back with that same business model that was fundamentally flawed in 2019. Many businesses breaking even, making small profits or small losses, and a number that were being successful, but many on the breadline. So I pose the question, as we sit here with that information that I gather globally, as a generalization, entry levels down by 20 to 50%. I was in conversations last night at the Nuco Welcome Drinks and Networking with a team from MyLabs, and they were saying in Asia, many countries at best 50%, some of them as much as 70%. Sponsorships down generally, maybe flat, and in very few instances increasing at this stage. Input costs up, and I'm hearing generally 20 to 40% as a basket. And then the whole issues of staff changes, the great resignation, decades of experience lost from volunteers and permanent staff. I'm not trying to be negative and start on a downer, but the question I have to pose is, how is that model going to sustain if it was already tenuous in 2019? And I think we have a wonderful opportunity over the next 3 days to explore how we help and work together to build and evolve a better business model. So fundamentally, if I analyze it, I believe we have 4 main levers: entry fees, sponsorship, grants if you're lucky in some countries, and the basket of miscellaneous that I talk about, merchandise, licensing fees, catering, and various others. So the question I ask myself is, sure, we can cut costs, but in a market where costs have gone up 20 to 40%, even if you're cutting those costs with that real attack on our top line, how do we make this business sustainable? And I think one of the solutions is, how do we address more revenue, and how can we create more levers that we're able to pull? And I wanted to share an idea with you, and some of you have heard me speak about this before. And the question that I pose is, what about the fans? Any football fans in the room? Anyone watching the World Cup? Yeah. Keep your hands up, please, if you've been watching the World Cup. Put your hands down. No, keep them up. Keep them up until I pose this question. Keep your hands up, sorry, if you have data on your participants of which ones of them are football fans. Have a look around. Just an idea. The most popular sport in the world, and not one of you in the room with all of your millions of race participants know which ones of them maybe support football. What a great story to go to someone like Standard Chartered in her previous role, who also happened to sponsor Liverpool, and say 50% of participants in the Singapore Marathon are also football fans, and 10% of them are Liverpool fans. How great are we creating this opportunity? Do you know, hands up, anyone know how many of your participants love to travel in data? I see one hand. People travel all over the world to participate in marathons, but we don't have any data, and we've got a data panel this afternoon, which I'm so excited about the outcomes that may come out of that. But I want to talk about our fans. Football fans sit in the stand. Our fans support us on our journey. They stand at the finish line. They stand on the route. How many of you have a strategy to engage our fans as opposed to our participants? Hands up? Okay, a few of them. But are we missing an opportunity to take all of those supporters, the husbands, the wives, the sons, the daughters, the work colleagues, that come on that journey with that participant from the time they sign up to the time they get to the finish line? What if I went to Standard Chartered and I said, I'm the Singapore Marathon, I have 50,000 participants, but I have even 1-to-1, but it's probably 2 or 3 or 4-to-1, another 50,000 fans who I'm engaged with and I have first-party data on. Maybe that's a better story and a better commercial story. I'd like to move on to the offering. And the question I'd like to pose is, what are the problems we are solving for society, for our participants? And again, being a little bit controversial, is it time to take off the race blinkers? So often when I speak to people in our industry, they talk about races. Gut feeling of what percentage of our participants are lining up with the objective to race, to improve their personal best. I've seen data of somewhere between 15 and 20%. So we're looking after 15 to 20% here, and we're not so bothered about the 80% here that are turning up for lots of other reasons. I'm not saying not bothered, because we put on an experience, we create all sorts of other things. But what if we were to look at our events in a totally different space? It's a badge of honor to be a race director, I get that. People have been in this industry for many years being a race director. We need race directors who ultimately have responsibility on race day. But if you're wearing your race director hat 365 days of the year, what are you missing on the periphery if you might become an event organizer or a health and well-being coordinator or something else that takes away those blinkers and gets you to think a little bit laterally? So the question again I propose, and I'm posing lots of questions today, are we in the race industry, or are we perhaps in the business of building health and well-being communities? And we're going to have a session on health and well-being and communities later on, and I know Caroline's got some great insights to share with us on that session. These are a few quotes that I've picked up, and this is one that I actually picked up at European Business of Running, and I raced back to my room and added it to my presentation. Jakob Larsen, who many of you know, the objective of major running events most frequently mentioned by cities to inspire healthy living. I was talking to a young guy, Peter Hedestedt, who runs a business called Athletopia. He did a survey of his runners. 50% of them stated their main reason for participating as health and well-being. I want to talk about the power of community. So I said health and well-being and community. A Harvard study over 80 years came to the conclusion it's not diet or exercise, but your social connections that drive longevity. We have these amazing communities within us, and that led on to some more research they did about families in Sardinia, one of the real blue zones in the world of people living way beyond many other places. And the conclusion that they came to was that it was about the strong ties to family and friends along, and this is where it ties into us obviously, to frequent physical activity. So as we build these communities and communities within our communities, I often have these conversations, and I've been guilty of it myself in the past, of saying we have 50,000 participants in our community, as for example the Singapore Marathon on event day. But are we maybe missing opportunities of those sub-communities within the community? Are we maybe, as the event, the center of the hub? And within our community, we've got Liverpool football fans, and we've got football fans, and we've got triathletes, and we've got cyclists who are all communicating with us and being part of our event. If we bring them into the broader community and acknowledge their smaller communities, what opportunities might we be able to create for ourselves? Have we evolved our offering to sponsors? I still see so many proposals that talk about your logo here, this much signage here, your logo on the website, your logo on the t-shirt, a merchandise stall, an expo store. But have we really evolved? And I know there's a number of us in the room that have, and some of these are going to be case studies as we go through the next few days. But really urge you to say there's these opportunities of really understanding a sponsor's objectives and evolving that offering way beyond the branding type of message that's so behind us now. What are we doing about the future? And I think it's something that we're paying for right now. That we, as we got on the wave of the running boom, we kind of took it for granted that the treadmill was going to keep delivering for us. I'm very guilty of it. That's a picture of the Singapore Marathon, the Standard Chartered Singapore Marathon that I used to organize. We had a kids' dash with 5,000 people in it. Was that a strategic objective to bring our next generation in? No. We saw that as a bolt-on, extra revenue, maybe bring the parents along, and we completely missed the opportunity to continue engaging in those. And I'm going to call out a little bit here. My son Sam and my wife Ted and I, after I sold my business, we used to go back to Singapore every year to participate in the Singapore Marathon. One of the highlights of the year for Sam, from a 3-year-old all the way through to COVID. Guess what email I would get every year, with all due respect to Ironman, because that was my business beforehand and I wasn't doing it. Dear Chris, entries for the marathon have opened. Please come and participate. I wasn't running in the marathon. I was bringing my 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old son to come and participate. There wasn't a photograph of him, which there could have been, or of us. There was no even reflection and acknowledgement of the fact that for 3 years we had participated in the Kids Dash and nothing else. There was no journey of let's bring your son Sam on this journey for us, so one day he runs in the 10K and then maybe the marathon and so on. What opportunities? I'm not pointing fingers here because I'm equally guilty, but I'm saying, what opportunities may you be missing by engaging and building? And there's many people that do it well. Ironman have Iron Kids, and Spartan have their kids' versions of it. But look in your ecosystem and understand what opportunities you may be missing. What are we offering to our staff? We obviously are struggling with volunteers. We're struggling with staff, as many people are. But take that real look and say, are you really addressing what they need? And we'll be discussing that on the next panel as well. So we've spoken about volunteering. So as we move on with about 10 minutes left, I want to go to the industry, and I'm going to invite all of you to please stand up. Everyone please stand up. Okay, can I ask you, if you're over 60, and everyone close their eyes for the 60-year-olds to sit down, I would be one of them. Sit down please if you're over 60. Sit down please if you're over 50. Sit down please if you're over 40. Sit down please if you're over 30. Take a look around the room. Yeah? Anyone recognize a challenge? Yeah? We're struggling to bring young people as the older people go out the end of our events and the dodgy knees like me and so on. And on a percentage, we've maybe got 10% of our industry that are under 30. I recently launched an initiative, which was sadly an abject failure, to try and identify 30 under 30 future leaders of our industry. I went through 2 months of promotion through our channel. I got 16 nominations. 16 nominations. I haven't given up on it. I just haven't had the bandwidth. I will go and find 30 people, and the idea was that we were going to bring them into a mentor circle and hopefully try and groom the next generation of leaders. But how can you go and speak to this younger generation that we want to bring into our industry if you don't even have people of their age? Let alone if I'd ask people that are under 20 or over 20 to sit down. Some food for thought. And then let's talk about the industry. We call ourselves an industry. We grew fast. We stretched like this little kid. We had the running boom and we rode the wave for a while. But the question I pose is, have we really grown up? Are we really an industry? My sense is that there's more and more collaboration that's coming, but increasingly I feel we're disparate parts. One of the reasons we were left at the back of the queue with COVID is that we didn't have an industry voice. We didn't have data, and that's going to be a big panel that we're going to be speaking on. We didn't have the messaging universally, in some countries better than others, but in other countries still struggling as an industry with industry bodies. There's been all these global alliances and coalitions that have been formed during COVID, and some of them are doing amazing work. And I'm not calling people out for the work that they're not doing, but highlighting the challenge. So last week, AMSI, the Australian Mass Participation Sports Events Alliance, which I hold up as one of the kind of poster boys, along with Running USA and CISA, the group in France, of bringing the industry together with a long-term strategy, with conferences, with education, rather than let's just get approval for our events or let's get some government grants. So how do you feel in your country where you're on your own? You don't have a body that can help represent you. World Athletics is doing amazing work in the space to try and support the industry, but we really need, I believe, these industry bodies around the world. We need them to stick. They do take lots of work, they're volunteers, but to give us this voice in each country and then to join that voice together, and whether that's under the banner of MPW or World Athletics or others, so we can bring all of this information and knowledge together to help us avoid being at the back of the queue. What's the next COVID going to be? What's the next challenge going to be? And are we going to be left at the back of the queue because we don't have a voice, we don't have the data, we don't have the representation to get us closer to the front of the queue? The other question I pose is, do we need to rebuild trust? And I think this is one that kind of gets swept under the carpet. People are surmising as to why the participants aren't coming back, and there's many reasons. I believe that one of them is that we lost a certain amount of trust with the way that refunds were handled. Many people had entered in 2019. By the time the event that they'd entered for came around in 2020 and they had their third deferred pass, they'd lost interest, they'd moved elsewhere, they couldn't do it. As an industry, and with that business model that I've already spoken about, it's incredibly tough, but I think we need to think about, and there's things in the market. Protect Group, for example, have products in the market to protect entry fees. But I believe that one of our issues as participants are saying, not sure still if the event will go ahead. Am I going to get my money back? Am I going to get deferred? I think it's something that we really need to work at as an industry to rebuild some of that trust. So we've spoken about the business model, we've spoken about the offering, spoken about the industry. Hopefully some good insights that are useful for you. I'm obviously very happy to take questions, maybe for 1 minute after or 2 minutes afterwards. But I think in closing that we have a huge opportunity to take all of these things and move the industry to a next level. So speaking about the salmon, there's an opportunity for a rebirth. The reality is all salmon go to the top of the head, to the head of the river, they spawn and they die. Hopefully that's not going to be the situation in our industry. They rebirth with the fingerlings. Hopefully we're not going to lose too many of our businesses and events over the next year as the recession inevitably bites. But when we do come back, what is the business model? How much collaboration are we going to have? Are we going to come together as a group and support each other? Are we going to learn from each other? Are we going to knowledge share? Are we going to build the ecosystem for a more successful industry? And I'm going to finish when I talk about collaboration. This is a wonderful collaboration that we did with Abbott World Marathon Majors, and just as Donna came into the role, huge support from Hugh Brasher and Mike Nishi and others. And I just wanted to end on what I think is a really positive and powerful note. Some volume, please.
Contact. Until recently, this couldn't happen. Now things are moving in the right direction. A brighter future is just around the corner, over the hill, or beyond that next distance marker. It's scientific. We are made to move. We thrive on connection. We grow by doing activities with others. A shared experience that makes us human. The world is opening up again. So now is the right time to connect emotionally, to run together, to laugh together, to just be together, and to celebrate as one. Together we run. Together we are better. Together we move. Sign up now to join in.
So for any of you that may not be aware of it, that was a campaign that we created to try and help, funded by Abbott World Marathon Majors, to try and help events with some high-quality marketing tools, and that still exists. It's on the MPW website. It's a customizable video. There's a whole bunch of assets. It's subtitled now in, I think, 10 languages. So please, if you haven't used it, haven't seen it, we saw a number of events putting their call to action at the end of it, and another, what I'm saying, is a great example for us to collaborate. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. You're going to hear a lot of my voice over the rest of the day. Really looking forward to engaging. Here to help, whether it's today or when we leave here. Thanks so much, and I'll be back again in a couple of minutes with the first panel.